What was your biggest "we need to leave now" moment? We were sitting on the sand at the beach, talking and having drinks. I looked up at the sky behind my friends and saw this huge, dark, ominous cloud mass moving towards us. I got up and said, "Guys, we have to leave now. Huge thunderstorm coming right at us. We have about 5 minutes." We managed to reach the car but had to sit in it for a good hour while the wind and rain ravaged everything around us. Trees were left bare, benches were upturned, trash cans were dragged for half a mile. The beach club tents were blown away, and some people were seriously injured when stuff fell on them. It was all over the news that evening. My friends still talk about how I saved them that day. Most people didn't move from where they were sitting, even though we tried to warn them. A couple of friends and I were outside a house party talking. I noticed out of the corner of my eye something dart behind some bushes towards the end of the block, maybe 4 houses down? It was dark out, so it was hard to tell. We stood there a bit long and I swore I saw something again move to a tree a little closer. This wasn't the best neighborhood. Heck, my whole hometown isn't the safest. And I knew a couple people at the party were involved in some stuff, so I don't know if that entered my mind or what. But I got immediate goosebumps. I said, "Let's go now." A couple of my friends looked at me weird, but later one told me they knew by the look on my face something was up. I apparently looked possessed. I had my keys, so we ran to my car and got in. I didn't even let anyone get their seatbelts on. I just hit the gas. Based on the news stories, less than probably 5 minutes later, a group of people shot up the house we were at. The others standing outside were severely injured or killed. Turns out a couple guys at the party were thought to have killed someone's family member, and it was a revenge thing. This was over 20 years ago, and I still get nervous if I'm standing around outside, especially if it's dark. New Year's Eve in Moscow. I was drinking with my SO in a bar, getting friendly with some locals who tried their best to speak English. So friendly that one of them gave us a Matryoshka doll that he was going to give to his mother later that night. They seemed a little too friendly, and maybe they just were. But at one point I went to order more drinks, and the bartender, who had been watching and serving us, gave me a stern look and said, "You should leave, now." I found this a little strange and unexpected, so naturally tried to question what he meant, but his face was drop-dead serious. He looked at the friendly group, then at my GF, then to me, and repeated his words. I didn't really want to take any chances in Russia, and wanted to see another bar anyway, so I grabbed my girl, the doll, and promptly left. This happened in the late 90s. I was around 16, cruising around with a friend in his Jeep. We stopped at a gas station to get some smokes, and we start talking to these two girls our age in the store. They invite us to a lock-in for their youth group at the YMCA, but we have to attend some youth group meeting first. Neither my friend or I are religious, but these girls are cute, so we accept. We run home to grab some things to keep us occupied for the lock-in and drive up to the church. We go in and are greeted by our new friends and taken to the sanctuary. The sermon starts, and it gets progressively more and more weird, and it is dragging on and on and on, to the point my buddy grabs a pen and draws this crazy dragon breathing fire on the leg of his jeans. Anyway, I noticed that the doors have large older men standing beside them blocking them. Then the minister drops this line, "Tonight, when the bus crashes on the way to the lock-in, will you go to heaven?" We both looked up and at each other to verify what we heard, and got up to leave. We were immediately called out, so we booked it towards the only non-blocked door. It was locked. The folks blocking the doors were now running towards us. We both took off, jumping on the seats of the pews, hopping the backs. We managed to get to a fire door and pull the alarm and run to the Jeep. Once in the Jeep, we peel out and look for the exit. The idling charter bus that is taking everyone the 10 miles to the YMCA is now blocking the exit, and the people from inside are running at the Jeep. We ended up just cutting through a field and down to a service road that eventually took us back to the highway, and we booked it back to my buddy's house. We ended up waking his parents up and explaining everything to them, who in turn called the police. The church was locked up tight with no one in sight, and the YMCA didn't have a scheduled lock-in that night. There were no reports of a crashed charter bus that we could find, though. Who knows where all those kids ended up. At a party when I was about 19. I was on the top floor with my friend, and he mentioned to me that he and the guy in the corner had been in a pretty nasty fight about a year ago. That guy is giving us some eyes and staring us down. My friend said not to worry, but I did not like the vibe this guy was giving. I saw the guy talk to his friend and send him out of the room. I told my buddy, "Nope, we are leaving now." Much to his protest, as there was a girl he liked at this party. I practically ran down the stairs, grabbed our other friend by the hood of his sweatshirt, and ran to the car. As we are backing out of this long country driveway, I see the guy, his buddy, and 4 or 5 more of them run out of the house with baseball bats, and they chased us down the driveway. So damn glad we got out of there when we did. I was at a stag do bachelor party in Warsaw a year or so ago. As often happens at stag do's, we ended up at a strip club. I was sitting with another guy who I'd only ever had jokey, non-serious conversations with. We'd known each other years, but we're both jokers, so we're always joking whenever we spoke. Anyway, he'd always had a history of being with a different girl every week, but he'd recently got serious with a girl, and they'd just got engaged. I was really curious about what made her so special and changed his view on girls. He said that it wasn't that he'd never wanted a proper relationship before, it was that this was the first girl he really liked that actually liked him back. It was really humbling to hear that although he came across as being a god with women, he had actually struggled to find what he really wanted. He then asked me about my girlfriend, and if she was the one I was going to spend the rest of my life with. I was perhaps caught up in the moment but started going into a spiel along the lines of, she's amazing, she's beautiful, she's unbelievable, I think I want to marry her. Just as I'm saying this, another of our friends comes over and hears me saying this, totally getting the wrong idea. He points to the stage and says, "Are you talking about the stripper?" Me and the other guy just erupt into laughter. It was the first time we'd ever had a serious heart-to-heart conversation, yet somehow it had descended into a hilarious joke. We were in absolute stitches, that kind where you're laughing and the other person laughing makes you laugh more. The bit that was most ridiculous, though, was what the poor stripper thought. From her point of view, she's seen someone in the audience point at her, say something to two guys, and then the three of them erupt into laughter. She thought we were making fun of her. Anyway, first we knew of it was when the best man comes over and says, "I don't know what the hell you've said to that stripper, but we've got to go. She's sending the bouncers over." We thought he was joking, but he made us go. We figured out later what had happened. TLDR. Had to leave a strip club because I was talking about how much I loved my girlfriend too much. I live in New Orleans, LA, and years ago my brother wanted to adopt a dog from a small rural town about 2-ish hours away from NOLA. It was an easy enough drive, but as we got close to the town, Clinton, LA, I started noticing a ton of police driving around. No sirens, nobody speeding by, but I think I probably saw 15 to 20 patrol cars in the span of about 10 minutes. We get to the house, meet the foster mom and the dog, who is the sweetest thing in the world, decide to adopt her, and head home about 2 hours later. Everything seems fine. Tolly, the dog, climbs up into the front seat while I'm driving and falls asleep, leaving my brother to sit in the back by himself, which was hilarious. We keep driving and notice that there are even more cops driving around, but still no sirens. They're just everywhere, though. As we're leaving Clinton, maybe about 3 miles to the exit or so, I notice this old white sedan come flying up on our rear, flashing their lights, honking, etc. I didn't really think about it, but I figured maybe these people were hurt and needed help or something. It definitely wasn't a cop car, but it was unusual for sure. I started to pull over to the shoulder, and they pulled over as well, about 10 to 15 yards behind us where they stopped. I stopped the car, and when I turned around, I looked at my brother. For some reason, as soon as our eyes met, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I realized that there was something very wrong about this. I still hesitated, wanting to see if somebody needed help, but as soon as the door of the car behind us opened, a voice inside my head said, "Get the fuck out of there right this second." I peeled out and sped for the exit, making sure nobody had followed us. We got back to New Orleans safe and sound, but the entire time, I was watching for that car to ensure they didn't follow. I never learned what happened with all of the police cars or the white sedan, but something was really wrong. I should have listened to my gut way sooner. Stopping even temporarily was really dumb of me. I hypothesized that there was a drug raid or something, and the cops were looking for somebody while we were driving through. The white sedan was trying to get us to pull over so they could carjack us and dodge the cops further. I don't know though, and I hope that it wasn't innocent and somebody needed help and I bailed, but I don't think so. I think something fucky was going on. Went to a sketchy party. It's in a building that's pretty obviously recently abandoned. No one checked my ID, and the bar was a coffee table full of 2 liters and fifths. Whatev. I'm over 21 and this is more fun than the shitty club. I did, however, kinda move towards the back. Saw a lot of guys with 6-packs, and just a lot more people in general. Music is getting cranked up. Kids are getting crunk. I figure if no one's gonna stop me, I'm going to grab a 6-pack at the party store, and if the party chills back out, I can hang around, and if it sucks, I can drink it at home. I found a store down the block, got some beers, and came back to see 20+ cop cars surrounding the place. Drank the beers at home. Once, while I was in high school, word got around about a party to be had at an old abandoned barn in the middle of nowhere. With little else to do, my best friend and I drove out there to see what was what. We got there, and the place is crawling with kids in various states of inebriation. Cars parked all over the place. We saw this was a bad scene, and noped out of there. On the way back to the city, we passed a bunch of cop cars hauling ass in the other direction. We missed getting swept up in the raid by about 3 minutes. Was a minor scandal next Monday, as several student athletes were caught and lost their eligibility. I was in a school play when I was about 12-13. This was one of the rare opportunities I got to be in the school after it had closed, so I took the chance to have a walk around the empty rooms, while the other kids and teachers were all in the main hall. It was about 7 p.m. At the back of the school was a bunch of temporary classrooms all in darkness, so I wandered in. The temp classrooms had a storeroom that joined the classrooms together. It was only small with nothing but the usual classroom equipment in. From out of this storeroom came my English teacher. Now, the class and storeroom are in darkness. I know I shouldn't be there, and I'm pretty sure he shouldn't either. Strangely, he doesn't act at all surprised, and in fact beckons me over and tells me he has something he wants to show me in the storeroom. It all just felt wrong. As soon as he disappeared back into the storeroom, I ran as fast as my legs could go. We were on a road trip back from a wedding in Sioux Falls, SD, and on our way back to Kentucky one night, myself and 3 of my friends. We were in who knows where, Indiana, at about 2 a.m., and my friend had to pee. So we pulled into this gas station that looked like it had been abandoned, or at least part of a post-apocalyptic aftermath, and he decided he needed to go behind the building to pee real quick. There was one car, running, with the driver sitting there in the parking lot, which happened to be about 20 feet from the side of the building he just walked behind. All 3 of us remaining in the car were watching him like a hawk, and he got out and stood by the passenger side of his car, kind of looking toward where my friend went. Super shady. All 3 of us simultaneously unbuckled our seatbelts because if he started heading back that way, all 3 of us were too. Anticlimactically, nothing ever happened. He got back in his car after what seemed like an eternity, and my friend got in completely unaware of what just happened, and we drove off. Still super creepy, and I thought we all were going to die, get in a fight. I was 15 and had just moved to a new town right in the middle of the school year. I met some kids that seemed cool and took them up on an offer to hang out and spend the night at one of their houses. The evening started off great. The host's mom made pizza for everyone. They had a pool table and a PlayStation. I was having a lot of fun when they all decided to head up to Mike's and try to buy some weed. I had not been around drugs at all, but was feeling rebellious and nervously went along. It turned out that Mike lived in a questionably habitable house trailer about 15 miles out of town in the woods, with somewhat of an entourage of seedy figures. He was a formidable character, lanky, wild-eyed, and rail-thin with a nervous way about him that instantly put me on edge. I am big guy, and he instantly started sizing me up, grabbing my shoulders several times and squeezing my arms. He said I looked like a fighter and asked me if I wanted to fight him. I declined, but he kept telling everyone I was going to fight him. I'm sure I was visibly nervous, but my new friends just laughed it off and asked if they could buy some weed. He insisted that we have a drink first. I had also never drank, but I did my best to choke down the warm beer that was shoved unceremoniously into my hand. I took in my surroundings as we drank. There were tin foil and glass pipes on every flat surface, at least 3 guns, and the rest of the adults looked like they were well ahead of us in the consumption department. My friend insisted on getting the weed, but Mike kept telling him not to be in a hurry. He brought out a bong, lit it, and started passing it around. This was the first time I smoked weed. He harangued me over how I wasn't inhaling enough, and then laughed like a hyena when I had a coughing fit. He kept making comments on how I was big and acted tough, but I was really just a big wuss, and other choice words that don't need repeating. He also made comments akin to taking me in the back room and making a man out of me. One of the tooth-impaired women began some long monologue about a man's G-spot being located rectally. Eventually, I reached the frozen dirt road and started walking back towards the highway, staying in the trees. I seen headlights coming and hid, hoping it was my friend. It wasn't. Neither was the next one. I continued walking. It is worth noting that this is years before I had a cell phone. After about 4 miles, the road met the highway back to town. It was harder to avoid walking on the road at this point. It was clear for quite a ways on either side, but when a car came driving by, I ducked down in the snow on the shoulder, trying to get my head just high enough to see, hoping it was a police cruiser. I did this several times, my jeans soaked, me shivering with cold and fear. It was about the 4th time or so that I did this that I noticed the car was driving much slower than the 65 mph speed limit. Was this Mike coming to kill the suspected narc? I stayed low and prepared to run. As it got closer, I recognized my friend's minivan. I stood up and waved and hoped for the best. My friends told me that the scene inside the house had turned to absolute chaos after I kicked the door open. Mike had gone ballistic, screaming that I was a narc and that he was going to kill me. He had picked up a gun and pointed it at my friends, telling them he was going to kill them for bringing a narc to his house. They insisted I was not, and that he had just scared me. He then stomped down the hallway and fired the gun several times out of the door I had kicked open. My friends took advantage of this moment to pull the couch out of the way and run out the front door, jumping in the minivan and tearing off down the lane. After turning onto the road, they seen headlights behind them and intentionally killed their lights and turned down someone else's lane. They waited a while and then went out looking for me, driving up and down the dirt road and highway, absolutely freaking out and not knowing what to do. They apologized profusely and insisted that nothing like that had ever happened before. We were all pretty relieved to be back together. Not long after this, Mike and several others were arrested in a drug sting. I was worried that he thought I had something to do with this and hoped he wouldn't be holding a grudge and want to come looking for me, a lingering fear that eventually subsided, until one day, a couple years later. I was working at the local grocery store, and here came Mike, looking a little worse for wear. He looked right at me, and my heart about stopped. "You're a big kid," he said. "You play football?" Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories.